My mom once told me a story about how she used Facebook Marketplace when I was a kid, and it was the only time she ever used it. She was just looking on there for fun and browsing the listings, and she wasn't under the impression of buying anything at all or searching for anything specific. Like I said, she was just checking things out. She came across this clothing bundle though that piqued her eye. It was a woman's clothing bundle that had over 100 items that was listed for like $50 or something. She checked out the bio and found out that most of the clothes were in her size, so she messaged the seller asking if she could see some pictures. The woman who was selling the clothes replied to her and told her that she couldn't send pictures of the clothes, and explained that most of the clothing items were American Eagle and H&M tops, pants, and sweaters, and etc. The lady asked if my mom wanted to meet, and when my mom said yes, the lady asked her if she could meet her at a nearby church just a few miles outside of town. My mom knew exactly what church she was talking about, so she agreed. The church was on the countryside, but there were two houses directly next to it on each side, so my mom felt like it would be safe. They met up around 6:30 p.m. that same evening, and that's when everything went horrible. I'm going to try my best to paint a picture for you and describe exactly how my mom explained this to me. When my mom got to the church to meet up with this lady, she parked in the front and waited for the seller to arrive. She messaged the seller after 5 or 10 minutes of being there to let her know that she was there. The lady whose name on Facebook said it was Rachel, I think, messaged her back and told my mom that she was already out there as well, and to come to the back side of the church. My mom was extremely suspicious, but still, she went and drove towards the back end of the parking lot. As soon as she turned the corner, she saw a white van parked alongside the very edge of the pavement, directly next to the cornfield that was behind the church. But she didn't see anyone in the van at all. The windows were tinted black and she couldn't see a thing in there. My mom rolled her window down and parked a few feet away from the van parallel to it and waved at her to signal that she was the one wanting to buy the clothes. The lady stepped out of the van with a big garbage bag of clothes in it and handed it to my mom, and then they both introduced themselves to each other. My mom gave her the money, but right then and there was when she noticed two men come from behind the van on each side that had masks on. They grabbed her, but they struggled to put her in the van. One of them started hitting my mom, trying to get her to comply. But my mom, being the fighter that she is, stood her ground and fought them off as best as she could. The only reason my mom is still here today is because a farmer came out who had been apparently watching the whole thing from next door with a hunting rifle and started screaming at the men and then threatening them with the rifle. The men let go of my mom and they drove off. While they sped away, the farmer managed to shoot their left rear end tire, but still, they drove off and escaped. We called the police and they went searching for the vehicle, but unfortunately, as far as I'm aware, they never found them. That man saved my mom's life, and for that I can't thank him enough. There are seriously some very sick people out there that will break any rule, no matter how horrific, for a chance at making some money instead of getting help or getting a job or something. It's absolutely horrible and disgusting, but we have to rise past them and not let them take advantage of us. My mom developed a very serious anxiety disorder from this, and it is something that she still lives with to this day. My mom and I believe that those people were trying to sex traffic her. You never think that this sort of thing will happen to you until it does. The moral of the story here is, if you're going to meet somebody off the internet, especially from a place like Facebook or Craigslist, make sure you meet at a damn police station. My best friend's dad was telling me about how he wanted to get a PlayStation 4, but he didn't want to buy a brand new one. Money was tight, and you could buy a used one for way cheaper. I decided to look on Facebook Marketplace to see if there were any listings for PS4s. There were tons of people selling them in my area, and it didn't take me long to come up with a good deal either. Most of the listings were priced anywhere from $150 to $200. I messaged like 10 people though at least, and asked them all the same question. I asked each of them individually if they would take $100 even for the PS4. Everyone either declined or just ignored my silly question. However, one person actually got back with me and asked if I could do $130. I I told him no, and he accepted my original $100 offer. I was really excited for my friend's dad to get a PS4 because he had been talking about getting one for a long time, and I really wanted to play online with him. The seller asked if we could meet up somewhere, and I told him we could just drive to him, and I asked him for his location. He took over an hour to reply, so in the meantime, my friend's dad and I, Brandon, were starting to get worried that he was ditching us. I mean, to be fair, I've bought lots of things off of Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist, and people like to be flaky on there, so that's why we were concerned. We really wanted to go through with this deal though because it was practically a steal. The PS4 looked brand new, and it was a PlayStation Pro with a 1TB hard drive, so it was a really good deal like I said, to say the least. He finally messaged me an hour later with his address and told me I could come whenever. So Brandon and I headed that way almost immediately. It was about a 30-minute drive. It was getting late and neither of us knew the area very well, so it definitely alarmed us slightly. It was like 9:30 at night, so it was indeed nighttime and definitely dark outside. The address took us to the wrong place though, so we messaged the guy and told him what was going on. Eventually, after like 10 minutes, we finally figured it out. We found the house and pulled into the driveway. The guy who was selling us the PS4 came out of the house and started walking towards us. He apologized for the inconvenience and we chatted for a minute or two. He gave us the PS4 and the cords for it, and Brandon handed him the money. We took off shortly after, and when we pulled out of the driveway, we came to the realization that we totally forgot to get the controller that he said came with the PS4. I told Brandon we should turn around real quick and drive back because we hadn't even drove a mile yet. Brandon didn't really want to though, and I think if the guy who sold us the PS4 hadn't have messaged us right then, we probably wouldn't have gone back. I can't remember his name, so for the sake of this story, we'll just call him Dave. Dave messaged me just as Brandon and I were talking about how he didn't hand us the controller and how we totally forgot about it. Dave asked us if we wanted to come back to get it and that he was sorry because he forgot to grab it when he came out of the house when we met the first time. We decided to go back because a new DualShock PS4 controller would be at least $60, so we figured we might as well go back and get it. When we pulled back into the driveway, I received a message from Dave that told us to meet him in the back. He said that he was out smoking and he asked if we could just come to him. I showed Brandon the message and Brandon immediately said no, that we weren't going to do that and that was extremely sketchy. I mean, it was sketchy and it was really dark back there from what we could see from the front of the driveway. But nonetheless, I decided to go check things out and I went back there anyways, while Brandon stayed in the car. As I crept up the driveway slowly, I started to get a bit anxious as I really started to question my decision. Something in me just made me keep moving forward though. I got to the fence and I opened it. Right away, I realized how dark it was and that it was even more dark than I anticipated. I took one step into the yard and I closed the gate behind me, and that's when I took a punch from the left side of me straight to the back of my head. I turned around immediately, but before I could do anything, I received at least 3 more punches to the face and I fell to the ground. Brandon realized I was in danger and he sprinted over to me. I don't know how, but he literally beat the crap out of the 3 dudes that jumped me. One of them even pulled out a knife and somehow Brandon unarmed him. We got out of there as fast as we could and went home. We called the police, but as far as I know, they didn't even show up because I never even heard anything back from the police at all. This whole entire thing was a setup. I think they wanted to meet us for the first time to feel us out and see if they wanted to actually jump us or something. I think that he purposely forgot the controller the first time as a dumb excuse. That was the last time I used Facebook Marketplace. I don't know if I'll ever use it again. I was looking for a new car because I had totaled mine. Long story short, while driving, some idiot wasn't paying any attention whatsoever and ran right through a red light and hit my car, which in turn completely destroyed both of our vehicles. I didn't have full coverage at the time, I only had PLDP insurance, so there wasn't much I could do other than buy a new vehicle altogether. Yes, my parents and I sued the guy, but that whole entire process is extremely long and I needed a new car now. Because I had a job and I couldn't afford to lose it. So my parents gave me like $10,000 cash and told me to get the best deal on a car that I could. They didn't want me to buy a piece of junk, but something that was nice enough and under $10,000. I began searching on Facebook Marketplace and I came across quite a few listings that caught my eye. There was a 2013 Chevrolet Malibu that had just under 75,000 miles on it for $8,000. I messaged the guy right away, whose name was Jack. He told me the car was in great condition and that he was getting rid of it because he recently got a new truck and had no need for it anymore. I haggled down the price and gave him an offer he couldn't refuse. I asked him if he would take $5,500 cash for it, and I told him that I would come to him. He reluctantly agreed. At first he sort of declined, but I ended up convincing him otherwise. He asked if I could come get it the same day, and I told him yes. He gave me his address and told me to come anytime after 5:30 p.m. and before 8 p.m. I told him that I would be there at 6 o'clock on the dot. When it finally came to go check the car out, my friend Kyle picked me up and we headed that way. As soon as he picked me up, I realized it was a bit further of a drive than we thought. I was anticipating about a 30-minute drive, but the Google Maps app said it would take us 46 minutes exactly. I was slightly irritated by the extra time it was going to take, but I got over it quickly. And I was just thankful that my parents gave me money for the car, and that I had a good friend to come with me to help ensure my safety, and to help make sure I didn't buy a car that was not worth the money. Just before we got there, we realized we were getting very close. But the closer we got, we also realized how desolated the area was. I was initially creeped out at first, but I got over it quickly. The terrain was nothing but farmland for miles upon miles. There were a few houses here and there, but we were legit in the middle of nowhere. My stomach turned all the way upside down when I saw the house though, and I realized I wasn't getting crap for service at all on my cell phone. The house was extremely run down, and it literally looked vacant. Dude, this is probably the wrong house, I said. There's no way somebody lives there. Seriously, do you see that? Yeah, Kyle said. What do you mean, yeah? I asked Kyle. I don't know, man, I'm just thinking, he said. Before I could say anything else, Jack, the man I was talking to about the car on Facebook, came storming out of the house and was heading towards our car. He looked a lot different than what I remembered him looking like in the pictures. He introduced himself and he asked if we were going to stop being so shy so we could come and look at the car. Kyle and I hesitatingly stepped out of the car and followed Jack to his backyard. As soon as we stepped out of the car and took a few steps following Jack, Kyle and I both looked at each other in pure disgust. There was an extremely foul odor coming from the house that smelled worse than anything you could imagine. When we got to the back, I quickly realized that the car he was showing us was not the same car that was in the pictures on Facebook. I confronted him about that, and he didn't say anything at all to my statement. He just kept rambling about the car and was trying out his best sales tactics he could. Hey man, I kind of raised my voice this time. This isn't the same car that was in the pictures on Facebook. Well, of course it is, Jack said. What are you talking about? It's a 2013 Chevy Malibu. It's just a different color, and maybe the slightest bit different from the Chevy Malibu in the picture. It still runs great and is in great condition. I told him I wasn't interested in the car, so me and Kyle turned around and started walking towards Kyle's car so we could get the heck out of there. As we were walking away, and as soon as we turned around, we saw that there were two men blocking the backyard fence and gate, and another man that was on the back porch with a bow and arrow, it looked like. Jack asked if we would like to rethink our decision, and that's when we booked it further into their backyard and ran as fast as we could. We jumped over the fence into the woods, and eventually we made our way around to the front of the house and snuck up to Kyle's car. But when we got to Kyle's car, we noticed that two of the tires were slashed. We were freaking out, wondering what the hell we were going to do, because not only were the tires slashed, but Kyle lost his car keys somewhere along the way when we were running. so we did the only thing we thought we could. We had to walk down the road until we could get service to call the police and my parents to pick us up. We walked for almost an hour before our phones had enough service for a phone call to finally go through. My parents picked us up and we waited for the police. The police found out that the house was indeed abandoned and that no one lived there, legally anyways. We were just lucky they didn't try to follow us. That situation could have gone a lot worse than it did. We made it out unharmed though, which was the most important thing. I ended up going to a car dealership the next day with my dad, and we got myself a decent car. All is back to normal now, but even thinking about this situation creeps me out to my core.